Now, I recently talked about who Grandpa Semi is and how he's possibly redacted, which I definitely think he is, but I decided not to include in that video as it was more of an Undertale theory, but he's a very interesting character and there's a lot that links to him being the Forgotten Man or the man behind the tree. If you don't know who Grandpa Semi is, go watch my other video on him because I pretty much explain everything. But if you don't want to, then I'll just summarize it again. Grandpa Semi was going to be Santa Papyrus's grandfather.
With the similarity in names, Grandpa Semi being the style of a font, semi-serif. Notice how he's talking about how he has a brother named Sans and a blank named Blank, which can be assumed to be Grandpa Semi, as there's a lot of writing about him in this concept of notebook.
He was inevitably cut from the game, but I explained in the video how he is the redacted sprite. There's a unused snail NPC that says the skeleton over there who taught me about orange attacks, and then if you mod a unused horse stable back in, it will put a redacted sprite, which is definitely who this NPC is referring to when they say skeleton. We can assume he was going to own the snail farm before Nab's book replaced him. He also inspired Gaster with his disappearance. I go way more in depth in the actual video, but I just want to add on from that. While he may have planned Gaster ahead of time for Deltarune, as he's like the overseeing, like, pretty much god, something very interesting about Deltarune, inside every single tile set, well, not, there's like 2 that I found that don't have it. Every tile set has the number 666 in like the frame time, and we know that's Gaster's favorite number. He's always linked with it, which I believe could link in some way to him like creating the world. And it's like, it's his own experiment, which like how after the chapters he always like observes what you did, saying very interesting. And if you don't get any achievements in the PlayStation version, he says you failed to get any marks, which he's treating it like an experiment, right? Like, we know Gaster was a scientist and he loved experiments, and he loves the word fucking interesting because how much he uses it. He also refers to it as his Deltarune, like he created it. Which is why I think instead of Toby Fox doing the whole Grandpa Semi-redacted thing, he decided to incorporate the ideas of Gaster into Undertale for like the foreshadowing, so he could be linked more to the world of Deltarune, if that makes sense. Now, let's talk about the Forgotten Man and how Grandpa Semi is the most likely candidate. Again, Deltarune Chapter 5 could come out and just like ruin everything, like every other theory. But I think Grandpa Semi is the most possible in this, like, situation. I'm not going to explain how to get the eggs, just because of the Chapter 3 egg and how much of a pain in the ass it is, but you have to deliberately go out of your way to look for the egg. Similarly to how you have to go out of your way to look in the Undertale code to find redacted. That's a little bit of a reach, but it connects in some way. If you look at the PlayStation achievements for Deltarune, there's achievements for completing the chapter that you only get if you do not get the egg. And it says complete without issue, which if Gaster created the world, he sees the man behind the tree, in this situation Grandpa Semi, as an issue or an anomaly. As like his redacted sprite in Undertale and how out of place and hidden the egg rooms are, they're both not supposed to exist. So Grandpa Semi being the one behind the tree when he's not supposed to exist anymore could possibly be the reason Gaster sees him as an issue. Anyway, I'll get back to that. There's less things about him in Deltarune than in Undertale, but there's still some speculation. The first egg room has a very similar layout to Room Water Redacted, and the song playing in the background was originally a fan track for Yume Nikki called Waltz of the Second Masada, which the waltz is like a very old-timey dance from around the 19th century, and if we're considering Grandpa Semi being behind the tree, grandpas are usually very old, so you know. Now in the chapter 3 room, the Forgotten Man says something very interesting which could link him to being old. The room is like a very retro styled 8-bit kind of room, like looking like a Game Boy. He says, once upon a time the whole world looked like this. And considering, like, if he was old, he could be talking about, you know, the past. When games look like this, it was a very long time ago. But he then says, oh, you believe something so absurd. Which I think to be, like, considering it's an RPG, it could be a in-universe way of, like, something similar to when your grandparents used to tell you the world used to look black and white, because all of the shows back, like, before they had colored TV were black and white, so they'd try and, like, convince you that the world used to actually look like that, but they just didn't have colored cameras yet.
He then goes on like a very old man style tangent talking about how the world changed the society. He like looks very excited to have someone visiting him, so he wants to talk as much as he can.
Before the room disappears, it's like he can only stay in one room, meaning maybe he's very unstable in the game, as he was supposed to be, like, redacted, erased, which is why Gaster sees him as an issue, as he was supposed to be deleted way back in Undertale, so it's like an issue now that he's appearing, and this, like, outside force is directly talking to Chris. You see, he gives the egg to Chris, whereas Gaster is talking to us at the end of the chapters. Notice the soul and how he refers to us as you, your, like, he would have said Chris, but no, he's talking to us. So he's probably very, like, concerned about an outside force interacting with Chris.
And even if it is Grandpa Semi, he doesn't know what he's doing.
He's just excited to see someone, as from his point of view, he was just, like, gone, and now he's here. So even if it is harmless, Gaster still doesn't want to risk the outside force interference. I don't know, it's possible. Now, the Forgotten Man in the Chapter 3 room gives you a schedule. He mentions selling donuts, tossing the leftovers away, and then collecting more wheat. Harvest is a term used in farming, and we see that the redacted sprite was originally going to own a snail farm in Undertale. Maybe in this universe he was more of a diverse farmer. And on Thursday he mentioned selling the donuts, which would take place in Chapter 1, maybe at a farmer's market. The stall he used could have been taken over by Lancer and Susie, which is getting in the realm of headcanons or whatever, but it's something to think about. Anyway, that's all up for interpretation, but now I'm going to talk about the Chapter 4 egg room, as it is very interesting. The only thing I can really think about with this room is old people usually get checkups very often, and he seems to be struggling with his memory as he wants you to remember him. He also seems to be very confused on what he's talking about. People in the past have also linked Redacted or Grandpa Semi to being a lost memory, which fits with the theme of the Forgotten Man and how he's trying to remember and stuff like that. Each egg room also gets more detail, maybe linking to remembering. Anyway, talking about the Chapter 4 room. You go into a door that has a tree on it in the hospital, and Chris draws what they saw behind the tree. And when Chris is done drawing, it says they drew a monochromatic smear, which is exactly what you could describe the redacted sprite to be. A monochrome smear. That's exactly what it looks like. And since in my last video I pretty much all but confirmed that Redacted is very much Grandpa Semi, it is such a Toby Fox thing to do to make such a mysterious character just a clueless old man who's just excited to see someone. And I know I said he has no relevance to the plot in the last video. I was mainly talking about Undertale, whereas Deltarune is a completely different universe, and if we look at the concept art, the name is like covered up. I can't imagine why he would do this unless he still had plans for the character. But since there's an alternate universe, I don't think it's completely impossible that Grandpa Semi could be involved somehow, because there is a coloured normal version of a Gaster follower in the library, where before this he was never seen with a normal sprite. So it's possible that Grandpa Semi could have been in the Deltarune universe, but since he's lost in the Dark World, in all these like weird rooms, maybe that's why he doesn't appear in Undertale. I say this because I believe Sans and Papyrus did come from the Deltarune universe, considering like all the other proof on that, but I'm not going to get into that in this video. It's just something that you can think about if you believe that theory. and he refers to himself as the Forgotten Man. And we know Grandpa Semi is probably one of the most forgotten, unthought about characters in like the whole of Undertale and Deltarune. Until Chapter 4, when Toby Fox included Grandpa Semi's theme. I have no idea why he would do this, but like the other room was making fun of theorists basically.
Maybe he's trying to get us speculating about Grandpa Semi, trying to draw attention to him so that we can have a clearer idea of the Forgotten Man.
But the placement of this is like really awkward. I can't link it to anything. But the thing that connects most to redacted Grandpa Semi in both games, and this is the theory you've probably heard a million times writing to anyone and everyone, Gaster Papyrus, but genuinely the egg theory connects most to Semi, even if it's very shaky. So way back in Chapter 1, when we knew basically nothing about Gaster or what his role was in Deltarune, people thought the man behind the tree was Gaster because he gives you an egg, and egg in Wingdings would translate to left, up, up. I poked fun at this in my last video because it sounds kind of stupid, but I'm not trying to say he's the knight, okay? But considering Chapter 1's heavy linking to chess, the knight's move in chess is left, up, up, and his piece is a horse, okay? He's not the knight. I'm just trying to focus more on the horse shape, as we know Redacted sits inside a horse stable. You could say, oh, it's a snail stable, yeah, whatever, but interestingly, in the Chapter 3 room, he mentions collecting wheat as if he's a farmer, and then going to sell it for profit, because that's his job. Not just a snail farmer. He could have had many other things in a farm, right? Now, the whole thing about egg and wingdings gets messy when I consider how I set the room is to test wingdings, and Grandpa Semi talks in lowercase wingdings, which is a problem when we think that egg in wingdings is only left up up if it's uppercase. But the Forgotten Man in Deltarune talks in all uppercase, which makes the theory of the knight chess move very shaky. But we can connect the egg to Temmie, let me explain, as you can talk to Temmie to see how many eggs you've collected, and the Grandpa Semi audio file in Undertale got changed into Grandpa Temmie and got added to play inside Temmie's fight. So Semi and Temmie are linked, and Temmie has an egg. Maybe Temmie got it from Semi, but that's up for speculation, but it's clear the two are linked to each other. Temmie's linked to Grandpa Semi in Undertale with the song, and Temmie's also linked with the Forgotten Man in Deltarune with the eggs. So everything I've thought about in this video is why I think Grandpa Semi / Redacted, whatever you want to call him, is behind the tree. The character Grandpa Semi has the most substantial evidence that we can link him to being the man behind the tree, but yeah, let me know. Also, shout out to this guy who said that Gaster is the Eggman because Gaster's an egg monster because the shape of his head is clearly an oval, and that his backstory is a glorified retelling of Humpty Dumpty. You solved it, bro. It's like I gave you the evidence.